All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are taking a close look at one of the most powerful and honestly controversial verses in the Gospel of John. It's a single sentence that has literally shaped centuries of theology, but we're going to re-examine it step by step through a completely different lens. And this is it. This is the phrase that just stops you in your tracks, right? Making himself equal with God. For thousands of years, this has been held up as a clear, undeniable declaration of divinity. But what if the original audience heard something entirely different? What if the key to understanding it isn't what we think? That's the big question we're unpacking today.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at that controversial claim and how it's traditionally understood. Then we're going to introduce a really powerful ancient concept called the law of agency. From there, we'll see how it just completely unlocks the surrounding verses in John 5, how it fits into this bigger biblical pattern of sending, and how it lets us reread that verse in a whole new light. And stick around, because we'll see why this distinction really matters.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can offer a new perspective, we've got to understand the baseline, the standard interpretation of this absolutely explosive claim.
For a lot of people, this is it. This is one of the clearest proof texts for the deity of Jesus. The argument goes that when Jesus was making himself equal with God, he was claiming to share the exact same divine substance, the very essence of God. It's seen as a direct metaphysical claim to be God himself. End of story.
But what if we came at this from a totally different angle? One that's rooted less in Greek philosophy about substance and essence, and more in ancient Hebrew legal thought. So let me introduce you to the law of agency.
In Hebrew, the concept is called shaliach, which literally means the sent one. And the principle is actually pretty simple. A messenger, an agent, who has been officially commissioned. Well, they speak and act with the full authority of the person who sent them. They are, for all intents and purposes, a legal stand-in.
And check this out. This isn't some new idea we're making up. It's captured perfectly in this proverb from the Mishnah, an ancient Jewish legal text. A man's agent is like unto himself. Now get this, that wasn't a philosophical statement about their nature or their being. It was a legal statement about their authority.
So here's the bottom line, and this is crucial. If a king sends an ambassador to make a treaty, that treaty is just as legally binding as if the king himself had been there to sign it. In the eyes of the law, the agent's actions are the sender's actions. Their authority is functionally equal for the task they've been given.
Okay, so keep that legal concept of agency in your mind. Let's go back to the text. You know, often the single most important clue to understanding a tricky verse is what's said in the very next breath. So, after the supposedly huge claim, what does Jesus say next? He says this. I mean, think about it. Instead of doubling down on a claim of being inherently all-powerful, he does the exact opposite. He immediately deflects. He says he can't do anything by himself. This is textbook language for an agent who has zero authority of his own and is completely dependent on the one who sent him.
And the theme just keeps going. The authority to judge isn't something Jesus just has. It's something that has been given to him, granted to him by the Father. You see this language of giving and granting and sending all over this chapter. It's a constant drumbeat.
And right here, I mean, wow. Jesus basically gives the clearest possible job description of an agent you could ever ask for. He says it plainly. I don't act on my own authority. I'm not here to do my own thing. I'm here to carry out the will of the one who sent me.
Even the miracles, remember, this whole controversy started because he healed a man on the Sabbath. Even the miracles are framed in this way. Jesus doesn't say, my miracles prove I am God. He says they are the evidence, the credentials that prove the Father has sent him. They're the stamp of approval on a divinely commissioned agent.
So let's zoom out for a second. This idea of a human being sent by God isn't new or unique to Jesus. In fact, it's a massive scriptural pattern. It's one of the central ways God interacts with the world throughout the entire Bible. I mean, just look at this pattern. Moses was explicitly sent by God. The prophets are constantly called God's sent ones. Think about Joseph in Egypt. He acted with all of Pharaoh's authority, but nobody ever got confused and thought he actually was Pharaoh. Even John the Baptist is introduced as a man sent from God. Jesus, the Son, fits perfectly into this long-standing pattern as the ultimate sent one, the supreme agent and representative.
Okay, so now we've got our tools, right? We have the law of agency and this clear biblical pattern of sending in our toolkit. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, to that original verse, and reread those two controversial phrases with this new context in mind.
So first, that phrase, calling God his own Father. In that Hebraic context, this wasn't necessarily a claim to be God in essence. It was a claim to be the Messiah. The scriptures in places like Psalm 2 and 2 Samuel 7 promised the coming Davidic king, the Messiah, that God would be a father to him, and he would be a son to God. So it was a claim to that unique royal messianic relationship and all the authority that came with it.
And this slide right here, this is the whole argument in a nutshell. It all comes down to the word equal. The traditional view sees it as metaphysical, equal in substance or being. But the agency view sees it as representational, equal in legal authority. It's the huge difference between actually being the king and having the full authority of the king.
So we've walked through the text, the law, and the biblical context. But what's the big takeaway? You might be thinking, okay, that's an interesting idea, but why does it matter so much? Is this just splitting theological hairs?
Well, when you see it through the lens of agency, a few things become really clear. The argument is about granted legal authority, not some inherent shared essence. The language throughout John 5, with words like sent and given and will of the one who sent me, is consistently the language of agency. The miracles become signs that credential a commissioned agent, and it all points back to one vital idea. Understanding the original Hebraic context is the key that unlocks the text.
And here's where it gets really mind-blowing. Jesus doesn't keep this sent one status to himself. He actually extends the very same model to his own followers. He says, just as the Father sent me with authority to represent him, I'm now sending you with authority to represent me.
And that leaves us with this final thought. If this agency model is right, it suddenly turns a complex theological debate into a very personal challenge. The same word for agent or messenger is often translated as ambassador. So the question isn't just about who Jesus was 2,000 years ago. The question becomes, for us, what does it mean to be his representatives? As ambassadors, how do we faithfully represent the one who sent us? Now that's something to think about.